All right, so today's lesson is 5.3, which is slope-intercept form. Yes, we did skip section 5.2. Don't worry, we'll come back to that. So, at any point during this video, if you feel like you need to pause it to get the notes down or rewind it because you missed something, please feel free to do that. So make sure you take notes as you would during class as I go through the examples. If you feel like you want to pause it and try an example on your own, please do that and then you can play it to check with my answers. So, slope-intercept form is a special form of a linear equation. And it's always going to be in the form y equals mx plus b. So that's something you'll be hearing a lot from now on. So we've already talked how m is the letter we use to represent slope. And remember, slope is rise over run, or the distance we move up or down divided by the distance we move to the right. So that's going to be our slope, or the m, and then the b is going to be our y-intercept. So that's what we're adding on at the end, and that's just a number. It's not multiplied by a variable. So what I mean by the y-intercept is any point that crosses the y-axis. Remember, the y-axis is the one that's going up and down. So at any time, if a point is on that y-axis, that's going to be a y-intercept. So in this case, this would be your y-intercept for this line. That would be your y-intercept, for example. So that's what we're going to be looking at for that b value. Now we need to specify that it's a non-vertical line just because we are going to be talking about functions. And remember, a vertical line would not pass the vertical line test, so we're not going to include that. Now we're going to move on to some examples so we're able to identify what the slope and y-intercept are. So the important part before we actually identify anything is to make sure that it is in the form y equals mx plus b. In this case, number 1 and 2 are both in those forms. So for the slope, what we want to look at is what number are we multiplying x by? So in this case, it's going to be that 4. It's 4x, which is mx. So that means m, or my slope, is 4. Now we'll look, well, what number am I adding on to the end? In this case, it's going to be 8. So that's going to be my y-intercept, or my b value. So that's 8. Remember, this is very similar to what we had done before, where we said we wanted to box the number in front of the x, and that was how much the y's go up divided by how much the x's go up. And then that number we added on at the end was the number whenever x equals 0. It was that y value. So this is the same thing as that, except now we're going to be relating it to this slope and the y-intercept. So we were able to identify those two values. And so now for the next one, again, for the slope, we want to look at the number that's being multiplied by the x. In this case, it's 0.3. Remember, don't include that x in your slope. The slope is just a number, and we will not have that variable in the slope. And for the y-intercept, again, that's going to be the number we're adding on at the end. If it helps you to write minus 4.1 as plus negative 4.1, then you can see that we're adding a negative 4.1 on at the end. So our b value, or our y-intercept, is going to be negative 4.1. All right, so now we're going to move on to some more official examples. First, we need to use this equation, which is in slope-intercept form. It's in y equals mx plus b form. We want to identify the slope and the y-intercept, just as we had done in our previous examples. So in this case, the slope, m, equals 5, because we had the 5 times x. The b value, or the y-intercept, is going to be a negative 2, and that comes from this right here. So now what we're able to do is use those two values to create a graph of this equation, and it's going to be a lot nicer, quicker, and easier than having to come up with a table of values like we had been doing. So the very first step is to plot the y-intercept. So we know the y-intercept is at -2. That means my point is on this y-axis, and it's located at -2. So that means that this point right here is definitely on my graph, and that actually has a location of 0, -2. That's the ordered pair to go along with that. So now what we're going to do after that is use the slope to get a few other points. So we're going to start at that y-intercept. If we know the slope is 5, what that means is 5/1. So that means I need to go up 5 and then to the right 1. At that location, I'll put a new point. So I'm going to go up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then over 1. So this point right here is going to be my next point. We'll do the same thing to create one more point. So go up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then over to the right 1 and plot that point. If you count correctly, those 3 points will line up to be a straight line. Once you have 3 points, you can continue to do more, but you don't have to. 3 points is enough, and then connect them to form that nice graph. So that line represents the equation y equals 5x minus 2.